Wow. I mean, already I'm freaked out, and it takes a lot to kind of freak me out, but this is some great stuff, and we are talking with Dark Waters, and you can check him out online at iamdarkwaters.com. So with knowing how to protect yourself now and with taking those steps, has it subsided at all? Has it kept at least some sort of a barrier up between you and this stuff, or are these things still coming after you?
No, absolutely. It keeps a barrier up, but it's it's like maintenance on you know how you have to change your oil on your car and rotate your tires.
Sure,
and
yeah.
It's maintenance that you have to do. Because when I first started doing it, it was kind of like I did it for the demonologist told me, he said, do it for 3 days and everything will stop. So I did it for 3 days and I went back to doing what I was doing, and boom, it starts again. And so the next thing that happened that really made me realize that I have to consistently do this is my son is here. And I have 2 sons. I'm a single dad. I went through a divorce. So my son is here with me, right? And they have bunk beds. My youngest son is 12. The oldest one is 13. So I'm laying in the bed. My youngest son comes in the bedroom, hops in the bed with me and wakes me up. He says, Dad. I'm like, what's up? He was like, something kind of weird and crazy happened, and I need to talk to you about it. I'm like, all right, what's going on? He's like, well, I was sleeping, and I felt like something was in the bed with me. And then it told me that no one can save me. And I was like, what? He's like, it told me no one can save me. He was like, look, Dad, you told me that you believe in the paranormal. If anything freaky or weird happened, to tell you. Mm-hmm. I'm pissed off again, right? So I literally go in the room. I get my other son out of the bed. I put them in my bedroom, and I sit in that room, and I pray, dude, for like 3 hours. I mean, I'm nonstop praying because I'm angry, and I'm like, this is not going to ever happen again. This will never happen again. So I prayed for like 3 hours, and in that room while I was there, the room was heavy. Like, and you guys are ghost hunters, and you've been in rooms where you can feel that negative energy. Oh, yeah. So I know you guys can relate to this. It's negative energy in that room. And I pray until it goes away. And I come back in the room and get back in the bed with my 2 sons. And the following morning, my son is like, well, I don't know if I want to sleep in now. And I explained to him, I said, listen, I said, here's the prayers that you need to say every day. And here's the prayer that your brother needs to say every day. And the one thing you can't do is I don't need you to be fearful, because these things feed off fear. I said, so say your prayers, believe in God, and go to bed. And so they say their prayers every night and they go to bed, and we haven't had any problems. But now I don't have problems because I keep my hedge strong, like super duper strong. Like not, you know how people in church call it, like in a black church where I grew up, they call it backsliding. They'd be like, God loves the backslider. The pastor's up there, they in the name of Jesus, they clapping and singing, mm-hmm. and they call it the backslider. And they say, when you backslide into sin and doing things that's wrong. Well, what this has taught me in doing this and helping people and talking to people, it has strengthened my spirituality to a whole nother level, because, most people have doubts about, is God real? Does God love me? Does God even exist? When you see the kind of stuff I've seen and experienced the kind of things I've experienced, you know that evil exists. So God has to exist. So therefore you lean on that. And I lean on it heavily now. And it's been one of the greatest blessings I can honestly say that's ever happened to me as a man. I mean, it's been a blessing and a curse, but it's been a blessing.
It's almost like, though, at the same time, these things know that to get you, you're making these steps to strengthen yourself against it, but it's like, okay, well, we're going to go after the one thing that we know will hurt you more than anything, and that being your loved ones. Was there ever any time that you said, maybe I shouldn't stick with this, or were you seeing it as a challenge of, hey, this is your calling and you're not going to let anything stand in your way?
No, because I don't worry about it, because my prayers include my loved ones, and the prayers that I use are for me and to build a hedge around them. And as long as I'm consistently praying, nobody's having an issue. Now, it puts a burden on me, right, to make sure that I consistently do it. And then also, you got to understand, I have a boundary box, a very strong boundary box when it comes to certain things now. When it comes to demonic stuff, dude, if somebody calls me, like, let's say you guys start talking about demons right now, I might get off the interview with you. I might literally be like, okay, guys, this was great. I'm going. Holler at you later. Like, you can't, everybody knows, don't call Dark Waters with something demonic, because I'm going to hang up on you. Because in my mind, I don't know, I literally do not know if you're under the influence of something demonic, and that demonic influence is using you to get to me because I have a huge voice and it wants to get attention via me telling its story. I have no way of discerning that. And so I don't even put myself in that situation. Like, I don't put myself in a situation. I won't put myself in a situation. So when someone calls about something demonic, you can cancel Christmas. A guy called me last night on our live stream, and he was telling his story. And one of the things he said was, "Hey, DW, I know you don't do the demonic stuff, but I'm going to tell you this incident. I'm going to leave all the rest of the stuff out." And I was like, "Good, bro," because I was going to hang up on you. And, so I had my boundary box. And when it's demonic, we put that stuff in a box, we wrap it up, we throw it in the ocean. We don't talk about it in the Dark Waters family.
But being from the New Orleans area, you probably encounter some darker things on a pretty regular basis.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. New Orleans is a what I call a place where paranormal is the norm. Mm-hmm. And when we start talking about New Orleans, you have to understand the culture of New Orleans. Like, if you ever been here and you understand the people and how friendly and how outgoing we are, when it comes to the paranormal, it's an everyday thing here. So you'll go to someone's house for Thanksgiving or for a Saints football game, and they may just be talking, and somebody will say, "Oh yeah, that door was opening and closing again on its own," and it's talked about casually, right? So the people who share their encounters here, it's not something not cliche. It's not something taboo to us. So me personally walking down the street, am I experiencing shadow men and all the rest of this? No. Well, I experience more stuff based on doing the work of talking to people than just living here. Now, when I start telling you stories about people who live here and the things that they've experienced, it will scare you to death because they experience some really, really weird paranormal stuff. But just for me on an everyday basis, while I'm going to work, while I'm going to the football game, I can never say that, it's just like paranormal stuff is just chasing me down. Shadow men are grabbing my behind while I'm walking down the street. That's just not happening, bro?
Well, I spent some time in New Orleans last year, my first time ever down there. And I have to say, coming from the Northeast, the always cynical Northeast, there's a lot of coldness here. And I don't mean the weather. I mean like toward each other. And when I went down there, it's exactly like you said, the nicest people in the world, almost to the point like I wasn't sure I could actually trust how nice people were. I was like, wow, everybody seems so abnormally nice. But you definitely feel that. And I actually felt like just a couple of days that I spent there and some of the very limited things I experienced when I was there, I feel like it made me stronger to go up against the stuff that I go up against. And I try to carry a little bit of that spirit with me, no pun intended, when I go into these things. So I can see how, you can be molded into being the person to share all this and having that be part of what is kind of running through your veins and helping you be so strong against this, because you definitely pick up a vibe there of, yes, this stuff happens, but we're not letting it get the better of us. That's for sure.
And that's the New Orleans mentality, man. You gotta understand, New Orleans is a city that's been through trauma and turmoil and everything else, but we party on, we live on, and we live our lives. So it's one of the things that paranormal is incorporated into our lives. It doesn't dominate our lives. And that's the best way to see it is that it's incorporated into our lives. If you ever been on Bourbon Street and you're walking around, or you've been in the French Quarters, you'll see people doing ghost tours and they're touring places and sharing the paranormal experiences that people have had. Which, by the way, reminds me of another story. There's this place called, and you guys were talking about something like this earlier, but this one is crazy. There's a place called Sabiza's Cafe on Decatur Street. Decatur, yes, Decatur. Decatur or South Peters, one of the two. But anyway, it's in the French Quarters, and a friend of mine was the owner of Sabiza's. He sold it because the minute he bought it, his businesses started taking a downturn, and people told him it was a cursed place, and if you own it, it's going to destroy you and your family. And it turned out that he sold his interest in it because his businesses took a serious downturn after he took possession of it. But when he took possession of it, him and his partner, it was around the time where I was starting to do the Dark Waters channel. So him and I was smoking cigars, and I'm telling him what I'm doing. He's like, "Listen, bro, Sabiza's is pretty haunted. Actually, it's probably the most haunted place in the French Quarters." you should, talk to one of my employees who had a paranormal encounter. I'll send you the email messages from when she resigned, and I'll send you her phone number. You can call her, right? So I end up talking to this young lady, and she starts going through the process of explaining to me what happened. She starts off and she says, Dark, I'm going to tell you this. When you go to Sabiza's, you will notice that there are no females that work at the restaurant. And I was like, she's like, have you been there? I said, no, but I'm going tomorrow. She's like, well, when you go tomorrow, you'll realize that there's not one woman working there. And I was like, well, why don't women work there? She said, because of the angry man. And I'm like, okay, who's the angry man? She was like, it's a shadow man that approaches you when you're working there. He'll approach you in the daytime. He'll approach you at night. He'll follow you home. He'll do anything to get at you. And I'm like, I'm kind of skeptical, but I'm like, I have read her email, her resignation email. And so I said, well, finish telling me your story. So this girl had been working there for about 3 weeks, and she was a hostess. You know, the young lady who's standing at the front door, and when you walk in, she gives you the menu and seats you. She's a hostess. And so she had been working there about 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, she saw the angry man 7 times, right? The men don't see the angry man, the angry man, the women do. She saw him 7 times. And so she's like, I can't deal with this. Then she saw him at home. So she started to stay with her boyfriend in Mandeville. Now, to explain to you guys the distance between New Orleans and Mandeville, you're talking about 60 miles away from downtown New Orleans, maybe 75 miles away. So she goes to stay with her boyfriend in Mandeville. He's got a big house, a swimming pool, and she feels pretty good. She goes swimming broad daylight on a Saturday. She's in the pool swimming. She's doing laps on the water, and she goes to the far end of the pool, and she's headed back and swimming towards the other end of the pool. And if you've ever been underwater and you know how you kind of can look up through the water and you'll see a person standing there, but the water distorts your vision. So you can't really see who it is, but you know it's a person there, right?
Right.
So she's swimming back, and she thinks it's her boyfriend at the edge of the pool. So in her mind, she's going to swim up and jump up and splash water on her boyfriend. So she does it. She swims up, jumps out of the water, splashes water in the air, and as the water's dripping down her face and running out of her eyes to where she can see clearly, it's this shadow man standing at the edge of the pool. Broad freaking daylight, standing at the edge of the pool. The water, this freaked me out when she told me, because I'm questioning her. I said, well, because I want to see if she's lying. I said, well, how did the shadow react to the water hitting it? She said the water hit it and ran down it. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, the water hit it and dripped down it. And then I jumped backwards into the pool and swim the way backwards. So the water, she's swimming backwards, the water flushes back down on her face. She pops back up and it's gone. Freaks out, hops up out of the pool, screaming and hollering, runs inside, goes to tell her boyfriend what happened. The boyfriend doesn't believe her. Like, he's like, yo, you bugging out. Like, you losing your mind. They go to bed that night. They're in the bed together. She's laying with her head on his chest. He's laying on his back, and he's falling asleep. And he opens his eyes. They got the light on in the room, like a little lamp light on the room and the TV on. He opens his eyes and he sees the shadow man, the angry man, standing in the doorway. Oof. He completely freaks out. I mean, like, he's like, oh, hell no. Hops up out of the bed. By the time he moves from out of the bed and gets to the door, because he's thinking it's a person, by the time he moves from the bed to the door, it's gone. And so he explained, they start talking. Now he believes her. And they're going back and forth, and he tells her, look, you are going to quit this job. You're done. Done, not going back. Like, you better go get a job working at Applebee's. You're done. And she quits the job, never went back down there. And if you go to Sabiza's today, I promise you, there is no woman working at Sabiza's. Like, if you want to do an investigation, go to Sabiza's and do an investigation. There's no woman working at Sabiza's.
Well, Stephanie, if we go back with the Strange Escapes cruise, if I get invited, I haven't gotten invited yet. If I get invited and we'll be leaving out of New Orleans, we're going to have to tell Amy Bruni that you have to go. And
I have to go.
My co-host Stephanie here is a psychic medium, so I'd be very interested in seeing if she can pick up on whatever that is.
Right. Well, I also have the lovely ability to be able to see spirits physically. no matter if they show themselves like that usually or not. So that would be pretty interesting.
Well,
I'm not
it's
really-
my understanding that the angry man likes attractive women, Stephanie, so you're going to get hit on, babe. It's going to get at you.
All right. Well, it wouldn't be the first time, so we'll have to see what happens. But I think you're still down in the area yourself.
Yep.
We're gonna have to hook up with you when we get down there, because I would love to sit and talk with you in person.
No, you're more than welcome to, but I'm not going to Sabiza's with
Oh
you.
no. We don't. That's okay.
Yourself.
We don't have to go there. We can go somewhere without ghosts. But I'd love to meet you.
Can we go to Two Sisters for some po' boys?
I've never
They
been
might
down
have
there.
those there
so.
too.
You know what? John Brightman, what did you just say?
What's a po' boy?
Oh man, this show just took a totally different turn.
I've never had one.
Spooky snacks.
It's
If
like
we're going to get po' boys, guys, we got to go to Maloney's. Maloney's way better than Two Sisters.
Maloney-
Yeah, when you guys hang out, I'm going to take you out. You're going.
All right.
It's
All
some
right.
much better places than
We need
Two
suggestions.
Sisters. That's a tourism spot.
Malo-
I've never been.
Maloney's is that place where they bought the other bar, right? The one with they bought another bar like down the street or next door.
Yeah, so Maloney's on Magazine, and they bought another spot a couple of blocks down too.
Yeah, I couldn't get in there when I tried to get in. The place was packed. So if you've got the connections, we'll definitely have you take us out. Man,
Yeah,
John
I got a
Brightman,
lot
what's
of
a po'
connect.
boy?
You guys have fun.
I'm going to tell you after the show what a po' boy is, and you're going to
Okay.
want to go try to find one right away.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Have you had one?
I've never.
No, it's
I've
seafood.
never
Wait, he
been
doesn't
down
know
there.
what a po' boy is? How
John
does he
Brightman
know
does
what a po'
not
boy
know
is?
what a po' boy is. It's the greatest
My
sandwich
God.
ever. I don't even want to call it a sandwich. It's a work of art. It's the greatest thing ever invented.
Have you had one?
It's a slice of heaven, is what it is.
Absolutely.
That's too funny.
It's manna. I think that's what God was dropping to them in the desert. It was po' boys.
Now just real quickly, it comes with the remoulade on it, but do you also add the hot sauce?
Yes.
Absolutely.
See, I
See,
can't do hot sauce.
it's all right. You don't need to. You don't
Okay.
have to, but it makes it better. All right.
And if you want to run his blood pressure up, you need to get him a hot sausage po' boy or a shrimp po' boy. Run your blood pressure up. You're gonna go back to your hotel room and go to sleep.
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna wait to give him the full description, because otherwise he'll get hungry during the show, and immediately try to take off to find one. So a lot of these stories that you've heard, I know that you've heard, and again, because these are people's real life experiences, I hate to kind of use the word genre, but you've heard of all different types of activity. It's not just shadow figures and ghostly entities. You've heard of some pretty strange stuff.
Yeah, I've heard of. It runs the gamut from shadow men to ghosts to demons, which I hate, to black-eyed kids, to things that will fall under cryptozoology. A little bit of everything. And we're talking about from all over the world. We're not just talking about from the United States. I mean, I got people call me from China. I got people call me from the Philippines, from Argentina, from Venezuela. My friends in Venezuela, I haven't heard much from them. I guess they got too much going on down there with the turmoil. People from the Caribbean. I get calls from all over the world and emails from all over the world, people wanting to share their stories with me. And that's the best thing about doing this, is that it's not limited to what goes on in America, because the paranormal is not limited to what happens in America, you know?
And by getting those stories from all over the world, you're seeing the commonalities between them to say, okay, it's not just a cultural thing that, this country made up this story. And you're seeing the fact that these things are happening all over the world, which in my eyes gives it more credence. When every culture is talking about something that's happening, then something must actually be happening for them all to be talking about it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, for example, I'll give you guys a story from the Philippines. There's a guy down here, I can't say that about him, but he's a pretty freaking well-connected guy. Very, very well-connected. New Orleans is run by these groups of people that sometimes get nefarious kind of connotations to, their business dealings. But happens to be a Filipino-American whose father was in the Filipino mafia, who sent him here to America. He and I become friends over time. And when I start telling him about what I'm doing with the Dark Waters channel, he's like, he's funny because the way he talks is real funny. He's like, look it, dog. Well, he don't call me dog. He calls me my real name. He's like, look it, I want to tell you a story about what happened to me when I was a teenager, right? And this is how he talks. He's like, yeah, so I'm trying to get me some. And, they had these little small islands that were uninhabited. And so he took one of his uncle's boats and his kind of girlfriend, and they were going to go to the island and spend the night so they could kind of get it on. They had some privacy, right? So he gets on the boat. They head on over in broad daylight, get to the island, post up, hanging out and chilling. It starts to turn dark, and they literally hear what sounds like a woman screaming, screeching and screaming, like wailing is how he described it. But he's in the process of trying to get him something. So he's, telling her, nah, that's just an animal. And that's how he's telling me. He's like, look, I was trying to get me some, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just like, look, that's an animal. So they end up laying up on the beach, and they're relaxing and they're chilling. And as he's laying there, he kind of sees what looks like a woman in white out of the corner of his eye moving in the tree line. But, he was like, look, man, I thought I saw something, but, your mind plays tricks on you. You're on an island with nobody there. And so I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. So now his girl is laying on the ground next to him, and she's afraid. He's like, she's literally trembling. She's ready to go. But the problem was they couldn't leave that island after dark because they had to navigate around these rocks to get in. And if he destroyed his uncle boat on the rocks, he would really be in trouble. So he's like, look, bro, we were stuck there until the morning because I'm not about to wreck this boat. And it's not like a boat like we thinking about. It's one of them little shady little bitty boats. He's like, I'm not going to wreck this boat trying to get off this island. Besides, I'm trying to get me something. Right. Well, he's laying there with her. And you know how someone's laying right next to you and your arm is extended out and they're laying with their head on kind of your bicep, the inner part of your bicep? Mm-hmm. You know that little cuddle that people do. So he's laying there with her and her arm's laid on the inside of his bicep, and he feels her shaking because she's afraid. So he goes to pull her towards him, kind of roll her in and hug her. And when he rolls her in towards him, he can see behind her. And right behind her, is a woman, ghostly looking woman, white, pale, with a bullet wound in the top of her head, like in the center of her forehead. And he freaks out. He hops up, grabs everything, grabs her. She didn't see it. He saw it. He literally yanks her up. They run to the boat, and he navigates to the rocks and then sets anchor among the rocks. This is how scared he was. Sets the anchor among the rocks and sits there with the oars holding the boat from hitting the rocks until the morning. Then as soon as the light breaks, they navigate the rest of the rocks and go back to the island where they were originally going to. And this guy, look, this guy's not the kind of guy that's going to lie. He's the real deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm hanging out with him. I met people in the Yakuza. People like, this guy's not going to lie. He's just not one of those guys that's going to sit there and lie. So, I mean, those stories come from all around the world, and it's because one thing that we all have in common is the paranormal. It's the one thing that people won't talk about, but we all have something paranormal in common. Just like Stephanie was saying that she's psychic and she can see spirits. Think about the number of people who experience deja vu on a daily basis, mm-hmm. or have a premonition. But we don't classify it as, it's paranormal, but it is. So we all can relate to it. It's just a matter of getting people to open up and talk about it.
And that is one of those things where, you can kind of come into play as the way for people to have their stories told and to have a voice that can share them to an audience, but also at the same time as a way to kind of, a lot of people are looking for validation for what happened to them. A lot of people are looking for just someone to believe them and to just have somebody who's willing to say, no, you're not crazy. And so when you've been able to say to them, hey, listen, I've gotten stories just like this from people all over the world, it's cathartic for them. It's a bit of therapy for them to be able to say, okay, now I feel better about what happened to me. But then their story is also becoming something bigger because now it's becoming almost sociological, anthropological. It's becoming part of culture now. And
absolutely.
And that's what I love about what you're doing is that you're basically you're taking that storytelling aspect of what made us society that we are now and keeping it alive. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're talking about. You just happen to be talking about scary stories and horrible experiences people have had. But just the fact that you're talking and spreading these stories is feeding into whatever is better than what these people are encountering.
Not only that, but you will be amazed at the number of calls. I do have a boatload of stories that I can share, but you'll be amazed at the number of people that I've talked to who just say, hey, I just want you to listen. please don't tell my story. I mean, don't tell my story. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, because there's such a plethora of them. I don't have to violate anybody's privacy. And I'll sit there and I'll listen to their story. There was a young lady, literally 2 days ago, who messaged me on Facebook who had a dog man encounter, and she just wants to have somebody to talk to. And I've been trying to get in contact with her. We've missed each other, but I'll end up probably talking to her tomorrow. And you guys will never hear the story, but she and I will share that moment together where she can share her story and she can get it off her chest and move on. And it doesn't bother me to hear the story. It's not like I'm not going anywhere where there's any dog men or anything like that. So I'm cool with it. I'm never making that mistake. So well, it's what it is.
You mentioned the dog man, and the Dark Waters family is all filling up our chat room, and it's great. Thank you all for getting involved in the discussion there. And anybody that's listening, you can do so on SpookySouthCoast.com or on our YouTube page, and you can get involved in the chat room there as the show is going on. But you're getting a lot of people that are mentioning the Dogman and asking for Dogman stories. So I'm assuming this is something that you have been collecting quite a deal of tales about. Oh, that was a bad pun that I didn't mean. I did not mean tales when I said Dogman.
Well, yeah, it's one of the more popular topics that people love. I don't know why people love this topic so much. To me, it's one of the most frightening things, Stephen, to understand that it actually exists. Upright walking canine creature. When I first started hearing about it, I really didn't believe in it, and I tell people all the time, I didn't believe in it at all. And then I started getting stories from people on the topic, and then the story started having these common themes. Something's true when it rings true, and there are things that are consistent among stories, not just one or two. I've probably talked about 500 people who've had encounters. Wow. And consistently there are these things that come across. One of them is that these creatures, not only are they real and they're physical, it's not like it's some kind of spiritual manifestation of them, but they're real, they're physical, and they're extremely intelligent. And they have the ability to give off an impression. You know how, like, for example, you're sitting in a studio with 3 people right now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's say Stephanie she made a face at you. Her facial expression can speak words to you, right? She can make a face, and you've known her for a while. She may make a little twist her nose or twist her cheek a certain way, and you know what she's saying to you, like, shut up, or you're getting on my nerves. The animal has the ability to do that, which when people first started telling me that, like, hey, I saw this thing and it had this kind of smirk on its face. At first I was like, wait, what? A smirk? What do you mean a smirk? Like a smirk, like a grin. And I'm like, I don't believe that. You BSing me, right? And then 20 people tell you the same thing that don't know each other. Then another 10 people tell it to you. Then another person tells it to you. I'm like, okay, there might be some truth in this. And that creature, man, is probably the most intelligent predator that we have on planet Earth at this point in time. Probably the most least known predator, but the most intelligent predator that we have on Earth at this time. And a number of the things that have been consistent is that it will intimidate you. It'll do its best to intimidate you. But the average encounter that a person has is, they'll see it in passing, or they'll see it and it goes the other way. That's the overall, if we're drawing a bell curve, right? And in the middle of that curve, that's the experience. I saw this thing, it freaked me the hell out, it went its way, and then I went my way. But if you get on the far right end of the bell curve, the encounters get more extreme. I saw this thing, I raised my weapon at it, and I shot at it, and it chased me down. Or it followed my truck home, and it showed up in my backyard, looking at me through the back window. Just to get into a story, this was one that I had last year, a gentleman tell me. Him and his son go out hunting. And it actually was his first time taking his son hunting, and he was like super excited. This man did not expect to shoot a thing. He wasn't even really prepared to shoot a thing. Like, he was just like, me and my son gonna go hang out in the woods, something that me and my sons will never do. I don't even understand the pleasure of it, but people do it. That's what him and his son were gonna do. They go out to the woods, they get into this little hunting blind where they're together. His son has the rifle, and he starts digging for beef jerky in his backpack, right? They had been there about 30 minutes. He's digging around trying to get beef jerky, not paying attention at all to what his son is doing. His son says, Dad, there's a deer. and the son, pulls the hammer back on a rifle, getting ready to shoot. And before the dad can actually get himself situated to look and see what's going on, his son is firing a shot. Bang, right? But when the dad looks up, it ain't no deer that's running. Dad says, "Hey, Doc, this wasn't no deer. I don't even know how he thought this was a deer. This looked like a gigantic freaking wolf, a gigantic black wolf running on all fours." I'm like, okay, explain to me gigantic. What does gigantic mean to you? Because words have different meanings to people and have different interpretations. I'm like, tell me, describe gigantic. He said, well, I've seen wolves on, TV and on shows that may be, 250, 300 pounds. He's like, this, 500, maybe 600 pounds looked like it was. And I said, what, really? You that big? And he's like, yeah, I mean, this thing was big. He said, I think there really was a deer there because I kind of saw the brush rustling off to the left, like something else was running through the brush. He said, but this thing stops, stands up. So you can imagine going from all fours, literally stands up like a human being, turns and looks at them. And I said, well, man, what went through your mind when you saw this? Because these are the questions that I asked to get to the bottom of it. And he said, to be honest with you, my mind wasn't working. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, man, my mind wasn't working. My eyes were just locked on a creature that was on all fours and stood up. And I said, well, describe how it looked. He said, man, it looked like a freaking werewolf. I'm like, like a, American Werewolf and London Werewolf, because I'm trying to give him images and feed into his story to see what he gives back to me. So I'm feeding him things to see if he just regurgitates something.
Right, to be like, yeah, exactly like that, yeah, right.
No, he spazzes out. He was like, this ain't like nothing you've seen on TV. And he was like, this is, when it stood up, it was about 7.5 feet tall, and he goes into this description. He was like, the chest had, literally, he's like, the chest had sparse black hair, and you could see this pink skin with these dots on it, like you would see on the belly of a dog. He said, but there was muscle mass there. And he was like, and as it stood up, he was like, it kind of rolled his shoulders back and twitched kind of left and right, like it was readjusting his body. He's like, I thought I heard clicking sounds, but I couldn't tell because we were a little bit far away. He said, but it wasn't like it just hopped straight up. He was like, it did it with strain and effort. It took effort for this thing to stand up. He said, and then it squared its shoulders and it looked at us. And he said, my son started crying. He's like, my son just started bawling out, crying and screaming. And I was like, well, what did you guys do? He said, man, I grabbed him. I grabbed the backpack. I grabbed the rifle. And I had literally had him in my left arm, holding him. And I start running, pointing the rifle at this thing just in case it starts chasing after us. It just watched us run off. And I'm like, okay. He says he gets back home that night, same night, gets back home. He's in the bed with his wife, tells his wife what he saw. She's like, I don't really believe you. And it's amazing how in these conversations, you end up talking to both people in the encounters. I end up talking to the husband, the wife, and you end up talking to everybody in the household because that's how I know it's a true encounter because it affects the entire household. So end up talking to the wife, and she's like, well, Doc, I really didn't believe what he was saying until later that night. So him and his wife are in the bed later that night. The son comes running into the room. He says, Doc, my son literally jumps from my bedroom door, flies through the air about 6.5 feet, lands in my bed, starts crawling up the bed and gets under the cover with us. And he's like, Daddy, that monster's outside. Ooh. And so the dad had just saw this. And he's like taking it serious because he knew what he saw. So he goes and grabs a shotgun. He starts circling back out of his bedroom towards the back den of their house. And their back den has these double, the sliding glass door. Like you're in an apartment complex, those doors that slide open, and you have that little screen that slides with it. That's how their back door is. It's this glass door. So he has a shotgun. He's going towards the back of the house. He's looking through the glass door. He doesn't see anything. His wife comes out behind him, and he turns around to talk to her, puts his back to the door, and they're talking. Then her facial expression changes, and she has this look of panic and fear. And she's stuttering and stammering, and she's like, oh, look behind you. Turns around, this thing is standing in his backyard, bro. Standing in his backyard, looking into the house. Stands there, looks at him, And I said, man, well, what did you do? He said, I thought to myself, this is not something that you can shoot. And if this thing wanted to come in my house, it would have came through my son's window or it would have came through that glass door. So he said, man, I didn't do anything. I just backed up and backed away from that window. And he said, I went and turned the lights off in the house. And I backed away to where I can see outside and turned the lights off to where it couldn't see inside. And then it went away. And it went over to the neighbor's house, ended up killing the neighbor's dog that night, but it went away. So that story goes to why you don't shoot at these creatures. And now just to paint the picture for you, the place that they hunted was about 6 to 7 miles away from their house. So this thing tracked them 7 miles to their house.
Yeah, it wasn't messing around. And so is this, the stories that you've collected about these, is it one creature or is it a species of creature? Are there multiple dogmen out there?
There's definitely more than one type of dogman.
More than one type, wow.
More than one type, yeah. So there's the stories that I've heard are about typically 3 to 4. There's this black one that looks like a timber wolf. Like literally if you imagine a black timber wolf, it looks like a black timber wolf. Then there's one that looks like a German shepherd. You know how German shepherds have those real big spades, like their ears shoot straight up off the top of their head? Mm-hmm. One that looks like that is pretty skinny, it's pretty slim, but it tends to be tall. Then the worst one, really, and I call this one a crypto terrorist, the worst one is this, I don't know if it's Bigfoot or if it's Dogman, but everybody I've talked to describes it as this. You take the biggest Bigfoot you can find, and Dogman typically has these reverse legs with these kind of hocks where it's like a dog standing on his back legs. Mm-hmm. This is like a Bigfoot body with regular knees, but with huge feet like a canine. Massive shoulders, biceps, long, extremely long arms, claws, and the head literally the size of a car tire. Like if you take your tire off your car, right, and you were to turn it to where it was not where the flat face of the tire was facing forward, but if you were to turn it long ways and sit it on top of your head, that length of that tire going, front to back is how long the head is. Wow. And then if you were to take and, make that tire a little bit wider than it naturally is, add some ears on the very top, that's how big the freaking head is. Now, there was a guy who actually drew what he saw and sent it to me. And and this guy actually just happened to be an artist. This was insane. I mean, it was scary. And the exact description of what he described, I mean, literally to the T of what he drew, I've had people explain it to me about 9 times having an encounter with this type of dogman. And it's the worst one. This is the one that everybody who's encountered this thing is left with the feeling that it was wanting to kill them, it will be willing to kill them, and it would kill them if they did anything to it. Every person that's encountered this particular version or type or whatever you want to call it, the people who've had the bad luck of encountering this thing have said, hey man, that thing looked as if it wanted to kill me. It didn't, but it looked as if it wanted to. And it goes to, I always tell people, we as human beings, we tend to put the personality traits, I guess the word, or the qualities onto these creatures that we think they should have. As how you impose things on something.
Sure, right.
People say, oh, it's just an animal and it's just a canine. But you can't do that when you start talking about these cryptids because they give you massive evidence of their intelligence. Huge evidence. So, for example, for it to follow him home and scare him and his family, it shows that not only is it, has an incredible tracking ability, but it's vindictive. Right. In order to be vindictive or vengeful, you have to have a level of intelligence. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
People don't get that.
It has to have some kind of sentience to know that what it was doing would be enough to intimidate them.
Exact. And that's the point I've been trying to get across to people about this. But people tend to be like, oh, it's just a creature. I'm like, okay, well, you go out in the woods and you mess with the creature and then you find out on your own. Because after hearing these stories from people, and the majority of these people, and this is the crazy thing about Dogman, the majority of people who share the Dogman stories don't even want me to tell them. So you listen to some shows and they'll have dogman story after dogman story, interview after interview, where they're interviewing these people who want to tell their story. The majority of people don't want you to know their story. They just don't. I get confused how people can do it on a weekly basis, and put out the story, because the majority of the people I talk to don't want anybody to know, because they're just that afraid. So it's one of those things where, the majority of people just don't want it known. They just want to talk to somebody about it. And that's where the real information is about these creatures, is behind the scenes, because people just don't want to talk about it.
Is the Dogman the weirdest thing that you've heard about, or has there been something that was even weirder and kind of harder for you to accept until you heard it maybe from multiple witnesses?
The Dogman was the hardest thing for me to accept. It really was.
Understandably.
Because at the end of the day, we're talking about an upright walking werewolf type creature that, is supposed to be myth and legend. It was the hardest thing for me to accept. I accepted vampires in New Orleans easier than I accepted Dogman, because I grew up in New Orleans and there always been these freaky, weird people walking around in New Orleans. And you could say like something's wrong with that dude. He may be a vampire, but Dogman was the hardest thing for me to accept. The next thing that really bothers me, and it bothers me from a self-defense perspective, it really, really kind of gets at me, is these black-eyed kids.
Right.
Because I tell people all the time, and I tell the Dark Waters family, I say, some kids show up at my front door with black eyes, I might ventilate them. I might hit them. I might shoot one of them. And then, how do I explain the fact that I shot a kid? You know what I'm saying? What would you do if, a black-eyed kid showed up? Well, you guys might try and talk to it, because
I've seen one and I've tried.
Y'all do that kind of stuff. But I probably would shoot them, bro. I really would.
I can't say that I blame you, because they are freaky, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. I'm sure you're getting more stories now than ever, because I don't know what it is, but I think talking about them and putting them out there in the public consciousness has kind of given them strength.
You think that's what's going on? I don't know. Me personally, I get those stories. They're kind of spotty when I get those stories. I don't get them on a regular basis. Now, the ones I do get tend to be crazy, but I don't get a whole bunch of them. Like if someone wants to go listen to my body of work, you may find, out of maybe 500 stories, you may find like 15 black-eyed kid stories. I know that when you look on YouTube, there are a lot of people talking about it, but I kind of use my calls that I get as like a sampling of, and it may not be accurate, a sampling of kind of paranormal activity. What I know for a fact is on the uptick based on what I get, and I just reject it. I know for a fact demonic activity is on the uptick, because I'm getting call after call after call that I'm rejecting about people that have demonic stuff. Something's going on with that. I can tell you that right now. Something's going on the planet where that stuff is it's amped up. I don't know if it's end time prophecy. I don't know what it is. Hopefully the world will last a lot longer, because I got things I want to do, like buy a house on the beach in Florida and hang out in a bikini, but not a bikini, and swim trunks. Did you hear me just say bikini?
If you want, hey, we don't judge.
To each their own.
Whatever makes you more comfortable.
Whatever.
We want you to be comfortable with the end of the world coming, but
in a man bikini.
But you say, I don't want to dwell too much on the demonic, because I know that you're not comfortable with it. But is it possible though do you feel like these stories that you're getting, that people are contacting you with, are literally demonic entities, or is it possible that just people have become a little bit more accepting of the paranormal, so they're not as willing to share the good stories? When they feel like it could be a positive spirit or a loved one or even just some poltergeist activity, they're not worried about that. It's not until it turns dark and negative that they have to contact you. So it might not necessarily be demonic, but it might just be a bad experience for them.
No. You got to understand that I get calls on everything. I've gotten calls on angels helping people in the military while they were at war. I get calls on everything, but I get more calls on demonic things. And so this is what happens. Like if you call my voicemail, it'll be like, hey, this is Dark Waters, leave me a message and I'll get back to you. And if you're one of those people that call me back to back to back to back to back to back to back again, I will never call you back, so don't call me, right? That's how my message sounds. And the person will leave a message, hey, Dark Waters, I wanted to share an encounter with you, but I believe it may be demonic, so I don't know if you want to do the story. And then when I check the voicemails, which are probably about 8 or 9 voicemails a day, you start hearing, "Hey, Dark Waters," and you hear demonic. "Hey, Dark Waters," you hear demonic. And I'm like, it's all started over the past, I would say, 6 months, where it's just been more and more and more of those, those type of calls. So I think it's definitely an uptick. But I get calls on everything.
I get the feeling that you might be right in your feeling that it's trying to get your attention. So you're better off just kind of ignoring that. We only have a short amount of time left before the end of the show, so I want to make sure that we get the information out there for people that want to hear all of your stories and the way that they can actually hear you on a regular basis. How can people do that?
Well, go to iamdarkwaters.com. Thanks to YouTube being the biggest noobs and acting crazy, I had to migrate a lot of my content off of YouTube because of their copyrights and all the rest of this foolishness. So iamdarkwaters.com is the place to go. That's the hub for all my content, especially the new content. At that website, we're getting ready to start doing man around town interviews where people are walking around asking people in New Orleans about the paranormal. By early next year, we will be doing reenactments, actual full-scale reenactments of a lot of the stories. So you want to be at iamdarkwaters.com. Now, if you want to just go through the entire journey, because what I've done really has been a journey for me, I would say go to YouTube and start with the first video. And the very first video is going to be like a computer voice telling stories. But those are some of the best stories that I've ever had were the very first ones. And you can listen to hours and hours and hours of content. And actually, you can get to that same content at the I Am Dark Waters page as well. So that's how you find me. You can call me if you want at 504-603-1630. Just don't call me at 2 o'clock in the morning because I might curse you out. But you can call me anytime and tell me a story. And then what I do is answer the phone and listen. And then we hold a conversation. And we probably end up being friends.
Well, that sounds great to me.
Awesome.
And I can tell you that it takes a lot because we hear a lot of this stuff, the research that we do, and I'm a researcher for a couple of TV shows. I hear a lot of people, sharing their experiences. And so you get to the point where sometimes it kind of just washes over you and you say, okay, yep, all right, yep, all right. But the stuff that you've been telling me tonight is fascinating. So I'm so glad that we could bring your stories and your storytelling ability to the Spooky South Coast audience. Before we go, though, I do want to ask you one thing because it's on everybody's mind right now. People are talking about it with the new It movie that is out, which, by the way, is great. I loved it. I thought that they went a little bit off the book in some areas, but I was okay with what they were doing. I thought it was very well done.
I will never watch.
Have you had any really good creepy clown stories come your way?
Yeah, actually, last year, I told one around Halloween from these two guys, like straight thugs, man. These dudes is like hardcore thugs. And they had a creepy clown encounter. It wasn't really scary. It was more funny than anything. But they are in Mississippi, and they ended up stopping at this gas station. One of the guys is cool. His name is Caesar. And Caesar and I are still cool to this day. Him and his boy stop at a gas station, right? And it's late at night. And you know how those kind of side of the road gas stations, when you go to pay for the gas, they don't let you in. They have the bulletproof glass and that sliding door.
Window, yep.
Yeah, so Caesar's at the window, sliding the money in and paying for the gas. He turns around and walks back towards the car, goes to pumping his gas. His homeboy is in the passenger seat, chilling, listening to music, bobbing his head. They wilding out. He's pumping the gas, and for some reason, he gets a feeling that somebody's behind him. He looks behind him across the road, and there's a cat coming out the woods dressed like a clown, like literally dressed like a clown. And so he's like, yo, what the hell's going on with this dude doing dressed up like a clown? What's this about? So he finished pumping the gas, and the guy's moving slowly, trying to be scary and all the rest of the stuff. He pumps the gas, goes to get in the car, and the guy, he's going to get in the car, the guy starts running towards them. Well, his friend pops up out of the sunroof. These guys they were dope boys. His friend pops up out of the sunroof with an AK-47 and starts shooting in the air.
Oh, no.
And so the clown falls on the ground, rolls around, and then turns around and runs back into the woods. And when he first told me the story, I was like, dude, you lying to me, man. He's like, I swear on my mama, I'm not lying to you, bro. I'm not lying. I talked to this boy, and I said, man, why did you pull out the AK-47? He said, I wanted to see how bad the clown was. He think he in a movie. I'm going to show him what it's about. And so Clown turned around and ran off. But that's one of the creepy clown stories. I haven't had any new creepy clown stories. I know that people are running around doing weird stuff like tying red balloons to stuff. Like, I wish somebody would tie a red balloon outside my house. We're going to have a problem. It's going down in New Orleans. So, but yeah, that's the only creepy clown story I have for you guys right now.
Well, that was a good one to end it on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we definitely want to have you back on again. This has been great. And I look forward to checking out all of your stories. Again, IamDarkWaters.com is the website in order to find out everything about Dark, to check out all the stories. Subscribe there, follow along with him on social media, and definitely check out some of these stories, because this is just the tip of the iceberg tonight, what you heard in terms of what is out there. So thank you so much for joining us, and let's do it again. Let's hook up if we end up in New Orleans next year.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. We'll put it on the calendar. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna do what I call a peaceful warrior night. You guys will end up drunk. You won't know what happened, but you'll wake up the next day, be like, man, I had fun. I had a whole bunch of fun.
That's all that matters. And we'll have real good po' boys instead of going to the tourist traps.
I can't wait to go.
Yeah, awesome po' boys.
I still want to know what the po' boy is.
I will tell you off the air. I'm embarrassed for you. All right, thank you, Dark, for joining us.
He doesn't know what a po' boy is. All right, good night, guys.
All right, take care. I gotta go get this guy a sandwich. That is
all right. Bye.
That is Dark Waters. Again, IamDarkWaters.com is the website. Well, that was just a great episode. That was a great discussion. Certainly look forward to doing it again in a couple of weeks. We'll be off next week for our Lizzie Borden event. Still some tickets available for that at SpookySouthCoast.com, as well as for our 2 new events that we just announced, including Bridgewater Triangle, Mysterious Middleborough. So check that out as well if you are interested in coming out and joining us in some paranormal adventures over the course of the next couple of weeks. SpookySouthCoast.com has everything that you need except for po' boys, but we'll work on that too. We'll get those up there.
Well, now we need to go. It's a must.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even if we don't end up going with the group, we'll have to just make a trip down.
We definitely need to.
And for everybody that's new to the show tonight, thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking things out in the chat room. You can get our free Spooky South Coast app for Android or iPhone, and you can get all of our episodes, watch the show live as it takes place. We've done over 500 episodes. They're all there. They're all free. So check them all out and join us in the fun each and every week.